And let's now go across live now to a media briefing by the External Affairs Ministry.
They have all been instrumental in pulling off a spectacular summit, in terms of not only from the substantive point of view, but also from the logistics and protocol point of view. So, ma'am, without any further delay, I give the floor to
you. Good afternoon, dear friends. Thank you, Ravish. First of all, Gantantra Divas ke aap sabko meri shubhkamnaएं. Really wish you very happy, warm greetings on our Republic Day. And what a Republic Day it was. As you all know, we were personally present there, so we could see firsthand, and I'm sure perhaps some of you were there, but otherwise on television would have also picked up and captured this amazing spectacle of 10 leaders from the ASEAN countries, 10 heads of state and government, sitting on the dais with our Rashtrapati ji and other leaders of India to watch this amazing parade. And there was the Republic Day parade, and there was very specific elements which were specific to ASEAN as well. And of course, those elements you would have seen yourself. One was, of course, the two tableaus that, usually when we have a visiting dignitary, there's always some way to honor. And, last year there was a marching contingent from the visiting, last 2 years it has been that. This year, the components that were very specific to ASEAN leaders, as a mark of respect to them and to honor, was the fact that we had two flags of all the 10 countries and ASEAN flag as well to head the parade. And thereafter, there were two tableaus. There was the themes of the two tableaus really focused on our ancient civilizational and cultural linkages, including Buddhism, education. The Nalanda University, Bodh Gaya, was represented there. Ramayana was represented there. And our trade links, which have really, our maritime trade links, which have connected us to the ASEAN countries. And then there were, one of the schools had in fact performed a very beautiful cultural piece, again, which resonated very well with the fact that this particular summit, the 25th anniversary of our India-ASEAN Commemorative Summit, was held just a day before our Republic Day, and to have all the 10 leaders as chief guests for a Republic Day. Certainly, I will request our Chief of Protocol, Sanjay Verma, to, after I've just quickly made some opening statements, to share some other elements. But you must understand that it was a huge exercise in logistics as well. And security, because just to have summits, we've had summits of all kinds. We've had FIPIC, we've had the India-Africa Summit, we've had several other summits, but they have never been done to coincide with our Republic Day. Republic Day itself, with the number of hundreds and thousands gathered on Rajpath, itself is a huge security and a logistics bandobast affair for the entire administration of Delhi, for Delhi traffic, for the security agencies, and for the Ministry of External Affairs, because we invariably have to tackle with one dignitary. But to have been able to meticulously plan the entire presence of all 10 heads of state and government at Rajpath with precision, with punctuality, and not just the starting of the parade at 10 o'clock sharp, but even earlier, the entire summit that was held yesterday. Since we last met, I think what happened was the plenary, and followed by a gala dinner hosted by our Prime Minister, and then a bilateral that he had with President of Indonesia. And this morning, immediately after the Republic Day parade, our Prime Minister also had two bilaterals, one with Laos and the other one with the Prime Minister of Laos and the Prime Minister of Malaysia. That that means we covered 9 bilaterals that he has had, and tomorrow the Prime Minister of Cambodia, His Excellency Mr. Hun Sen, who's here with a large delegation, in fact will be on a state visit with the full forecourt welcome to him, followed by talks and lunch, and of course a call by External Affairs Minister on the visiting dignitary, and then meeting with a delegation talks with our Prime Minister, then calls on Uprashpati Ji and Rashtrapati Ji. This is as far as the program elements are concerned. So I'll first focus just on the outcome of the summit. You would have seen what our Prime Minister, the statement that he made at the plenary, because that is available on our Prime Minister's website. And then at the end, there was, and you would also heard the response of the ASEAN leaders, because the Prime Minister of Singapore, who's the chair of ASEAN, had responded to that. And then in the closed session, of course, we focused on how to move India-ASEAN relations forward. And if I were to just sum up, whether it is what has been repeatedly mentioned by all the leaders to our leadership, specifically in the bilateral calls with our Prime Minister, the sum and substance of it has been that all of the 10 ASEAN countries have appreciated India's role and the bilateral relationship that we enjoy with each one of them, and the fact that India has played such a positive role in the Indo-Pacific region. And as a result, what the message we got from the 10 leaders was that they feel India is a very important component for peace, stability, and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific region. And whether I go through the entire series of what they discussed specifically, I can share that with you. But I can tell you that this was a repeated refrain. One, that they really appreciated India's role and that they would like greater India's presence. Two, was a deep appreciation for admiration for India's growth story. All of them repeatedly acknowledged the growth rates that India is clocking at the moment, being one of the fastest growing economies, the amazing reforms that have been introduced by the government, whether it is to fight corruption. Corruption, again, is something that is very, very dear to, for example, the President of Philippines has also himself taken several initiatives, and he was particularly interested in wanting to hear more about the Aadhaar system, about the digital economy, about the desire to do cashless transactions was another issue which was of interest to Singapore, because they too would like to move more and more into cashless transactions, and financial inclusion. So there was repeatedly all the leaders acknowledged. I had mentioned yesterday Prime Minister's speech in Davos, because that seemed to have had a huge impact and a resonance for them, and that India's growth story was something they were inspired by, and as a result they felt that they could do more in terms of greater investments and trade with India, and that India's and the reforms that are taking place can set a good example for them to replicate. So that was the second point that came out repeatedly, both in the interventions on the floor, in the closed session of the summit and the plenary, as well as in the bilateral meetings. And the third element, of course, is what is reflected in the outcome document, which is available again on our MEA website. It is available on our MEA website, and I know that some of you have already quoted. I've seen media reports about the 3 C's of it being focused on commerce, culture, and connectivity, about the need for working collectively in combating the menace of terrorism, also of working collectively in countering radicalization. Here, in specific discussions that our Prime Minister had with the Prime Minister of Malaysia and Indonesia, they both shared their own experience and the legislation that they have introduced within their own countries in countering this. So really the soft and hard aspects of countering terrorism. The harder aspects were the strict actions to be taken through enabling laws, and the softer actions was in terms of how to ensure that the youth do not go the path of extremism or radicalization. And there has been, in the past as well, an offer made by India to host a conference, which we will, and in consultation with all of the ASEAN countries and beyond. The next, the terrorism, I've already mentioned the declaration. There are other big elements which you already quoted. Maritime cooperation was another one, specifically relating to handling both traditional and non-traditional security challenges, including humanitarian disaster relief, security cooperation, and freedom of navigation were the key areas that were identified for maritime cooperation. Yesterday, when I briefed you about the retreat, I also mentioned that they agreed to set up a mechanism for following up on discussions on maritime domain. So these were as far as the Delhi Declaration is concerned. Specifically, the announcements that were made by India, which are also contained in our Prime Minister's speech, and the one that is of utmost significance from the point of commemorating the summit was the announcement of 10 Padma Shri awards that were given to commemorate the 25th anniversary of India-ASEAN relations. And these have been given to 10 eminent people from each of the 10 ASEAN countries who have been known to make significant contributions, both in connecting India to that country or to the region, or for their seminal contribution in their specific field, whether it's in restoration of, in archaeology, for example, the Laotian recipient has contributed in the restoration of the Wat Pho monument, or Ramli Ibrahim, the dancer, Odissi dancer from Malaysia. He has made a huge contribution. He's an iconic dancer and a choreographer, not just in Malaysia recognized, but also recognized all over the ASEAN region and in India too. In fact, today when Prime Minister Najib met our Prime Minister, he said that Ramli Ibrahim, the Odissi dancer, dances Odissi dance better than you Indian dancers do. So that's how good he is at his trade. Some specific 6 very important initiatives that I have to say that you would have seen the op-ed that appeared by the Prime Minister of Singapore yesterday. Our own Prime Minister also wrote op-eds which have appeared very prominently in all of the 10 ASEAN major dailies countries. So, this is the most important, with the widest circulation newspapers, have all prominently published our own Prime Minister's op-ed, which appeared in today's newspapers.
That was the live press briefing by the External Affairs Ministry on the ASEAN-India Commemorative Summit, the Silver Jubilee of the partnership there, and also talking about the visit by the leaders of the 10 ASEAN nations and how the summit has really coincided with the Republic Day celebrations, and in fact also mentioning what the leaders of the 10 ASEAN nations have had to say is that India is playing a very positive role and is a very important component as far as the Indo-Pacific region is concerned.